Episode 2, Tidal Energy. Story time with Nana.
Well, you see here, child. In 1973, there was an oil embargo, and it is often remembered as a crisis caused by America's over-reliance on imported oil. To America's crisis in 1973 was our dangerous dependence on oil to power the economy, particularly transportation.
Haven't there been advances in technology to ease our dependence on oil, Nana?
Yes, sweetie pie, lamb chop, honeydew. There has been advances in energy and automotive technologies, but we still remain as vulnerable as ever. Since 1973, our transportation sector's reliance on oil has dropped from 96% to 93%. That's only 3%. So unless we act, 90% of transportation will remain on oil dependency through 2030.
So, what can we do to change this issue?
To remain prosperous and secure in the 21st century, our objective should be to reduce the role of oil in transportation to 50% within the next 25 years, honeykins. Attention! Hear me! Do you know what peak oil is? Well, if you don't, peak oil is the hypothetical date when the combined daily output of global oil producers has reached its maximum and then begins to decline.
But what's the big deal? Oil's always been around. It's not like it's going anywhere.
Actually, oil is a non-renewable resource, but only in the last decade or so was the non part begin to hit home to its name.
So why do some people see problems with peak oil?
Using the peak oil idea, there can be difficulties in pinning down the exact date, and this is due to geological complexities, measurement problems, pricing variation, demand elasticity, and political influences.
So what do we know about the peak oil?
Well, what is clear is that we don't have another 100 years of seemingly limitless supply of oil.
So say we hit peak oil, what will happen?
The oil scarcity is likely to cause oil prices to increase, and the price of food is closely connected to the price of oil. So it should mean costs skyrocket. Food prices will follow closely behind. Municipalities could also be hit hard by peak oil. Suburbs could become ghost towns because transportation costs for both individual consumers and city transit could become prohibitive. So more people will move closer to work. And also land user patterns may also change, creating pressure for new public infrastructure.
Oh, Mr. Mad Scientist, sounds like there could be devastating effects. We need to educate more people and force the U.S. government to ease back on its oil dependency.
Yeah.
The Tidal Energy News Special is almost on!
Hello, I am Gigi, and I am waving to you from News for 9 at Channel 9 at 9. Today, we are diving into the fact that tidal energy could possibly take over for oil.
And I'm Katrina. Let's start with an overview of this wonderful, or should I say waverful, technology produced from the tides. Energy is obtained from changing sea levels, the tide moving from high to low, and vice versa. The tides occur because the Earth and the Moon are attracted to each other through the pull of gravity. The gravitational pull of the Moon causes the ocean to bulge out toward the Moon, pulling it to the highest level, or high tide.
Golly gee gophers! So, Katrina, are you saying that because our Earth's surface is 71% water, that this tidal energy could be very expansive?
Well, actually, there are very few ideal locations for construction of tidal plants. and they too are localized to coastal regions only. Tidal energy is limited to suitable locations.
Ah, very interesting. So, how do we produce it? There are three main ways: tidal turbines, tidal barrages, and tidal lagoons. Tidal turbines use similar technology to wind turbines. Basically, the water currents turn the turbines, which in turn activates a generator that produces electricity. These systems work best when they are very strong tidal zones, Norwegian and British coastlines to be exact. The upfront cost is very high, but it's still cheaper and has less environmental than the tidal system.
Yes, you are very right. Tidal barrages, on the other hand, are very similar to the dams in hydroelectric plants, except that they are much larger. As the tide comes in, water flows through the dam into the basin. Then, when the tide stops, the gates are closed, which traps the water in the basin as it passes through turbines, creating energy. However, tidal barges have very high infrastructure costs and are very damaging on the local environment. Also, construction of such dams is a very lengthy project.
Well, that sure isn't good, Katrina. Tidal lagoons are similar to barrages, but have a much lower cost and a lower impact on the environment. They are self-contained structures cut off from the rest of the sea. It works in pretty much the same way as a tidal barge, as when the tides rise, the lagoon fills, and when it falls, the water is then released through the turbines.
Now, let's turn to our coverage of last night's debate between whether tidal energy is good or bad.
Hello and welcome to tonight's debate on tidal energy. I am To the Tides Terry, and I'll be advocating for this alternative source of energy.
And I am Away from the Waters Wanda. I will be advocating against.
First of all, let me get this straight. The tides always go in and out twice a day. They're reliable and easy to predict, so it's easy to manage positive spikes in the energy. Tidal energy also has a very high energy density, meaning that the tides store larger amounts of energy than most other forms of renewable energy. Please, Miss Wanda, speak to that.
And therein lies the problem, Terry. Tidal power stations only generate electricity during those two tides. That's only about 10 hours a day.
Maybe it isn't generating energy 24/7, but it is completely renewable. It never runs out. The tidal power will always be there. It's got a very long lifetime. And as long as the moon continues to orbit the Earth, there will be energy from the tides.
Well, sure, the moon will always be there, but the equipment could always be damaged by freak waves. Not to mention, upfront capital costs are very high, as most of the schemes require massive concrete constructions to actually obtain the tidal power.
True, but just like every good, smart investment, there's always a high initial cost. And once, however, it's implemented, the cost is actually going to be generating the electricity at a very, very cheap rate.
A suitable location must have sizable ties to justify the cost of constructing that power plant. Just saying, but really, now you've got to think of the animals and the marine life, Terry. Environmentalists are concerned that power plants can disrupt the movements and migration of fish and other marine life in the oceans and other places.
Wanda, Wanda, Wanda.
Wait, I'm not done. Also, fish can also be killed by the turbines.
Wanda, listen. You win some and you lose some, but on the bright side, though, it produces no emissions, and it doesn't require any type of fuel to run. And unlike burning the fossil fuels, it doesn't generate or release greenhouse gases or other pollutants into the air like acid rain.
Thank you for tuning into the Tidal Energy News Special on News for Nye at Channel 9 at 9. Before you go, Bill has one more piece of advice for Mr. Obama. Do you know what global warming is? It is the use of fossil fuels that then release carbon dioxide and methane, two greenhouse gases that go up and trap the Earth's heat within the atmosphere. The burning of fossil fuels have already warmed the globe by more than 1 degree Celsius since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And in order to avoid the worst of dangerous climate change, we must keep carbon in the ground. 80% of the fossil fuels we already have access to must stay in the ground. This effectively means no major new fossil fuel projects and phasing out existing fossil fuel production and consumption by the middle of the century, replacing them with a safe, clean, just, and renewable economy that is 100% decarbonized. So, Mr. President, we need to make a transition from oil into tidal wave dependency.